guys, Tom with Permaculture Wilmington here. I thought it would be interesting to show you how many larvae come out of the mushrooms when we bring them home and soak them in water. So these have been soaking for a few hours, and you can see in the bottom how many larvae are there. But I'm going to get my camera that has a much better macro lens on it, and we're going to magnify that, and I'm going to show you how many of the larvae actually came out. I mean, it's a pretty good amount, and I think you'll be surprised. I think this will be interesting. So, but leave a comment for me and just let me know what you think about all this. I know it's probably, when you're thinking about bugs in food and larvae in food, it's not really the most appetizing thing in terms of the way we think in Western beliefs anyway. But these larvae that are in there are not going to harm you as far as in terms of consuming them, as long as we cook our mushrooms and we cook the larvae with that. And that's one of the reasons that we need to cook them for at least about 10 to 15 minutes on a medium heat. So just to give you an idea, guys, but let's move along here, and I want to show you what's going on and how many of the larvae came out, and what they even look like, so you'll know what to look for when you're actually foraging for yourself if you guys decide to do this. You can kind of see them in the bottom right now. There's a pretty good amount, but I'm going to put them in a jar and use my macro lens so you guys can see even better. But see that big cluster right there is just a bunch of larvae. It's pretty amazing how many larvae come out of these mushrooms, guys, that we don't realize. And it's not just this, it's anything wild that we get from nature. You know, if we harvest something wild, the chances of larvae being in it are pretty good. You know, we don't even notice it, especially fruit, things like that, you know, leaves. I mean, there's little insects in everything we eat, everything we consume, and our bodies are made up of insects. I mean, 50% insects, 50% human cells is my understanding, so very interesting how all that works. But we're going to pour this in here and let it settle again, and then we're going to get that. Look at all those. That's all larvae. That's crazy, guys. So I think that's good enough just to get the point across here. I might even be able to show you so you can see it here. That's crazy. I mean, that's a good number of them. All the mass that's in there, all that biomass is all larvae. All those little black heads, those are the black heads of the fungus larvae. Alright guys, let's check this out under a better camera so we can get a better look at it. So guys, here we have it. This is our larva. You can see them moving around a little bit down there. The amount of larvae that was in these mushrooms is pretty impressive when you look at the numbers of the larvae versus, you know, how many are in each individual mushroom. It's incredible. It's almost like the mushroom itself, when we find them on the tree, are predominantly larvae. But the thing is, guys, you got to understand when you're foraging that time makes a huge difference. So if you get to the flushes, they come up really quick. So after a good rain, mushrooms will flush, and that's when they start to emerge and start to produce their fruiting bodies from the substrate where the organism is. So the organism's inside of a log, or it's in the ground, and it's going to shoot up this fruiting body, which is really just moving the cells that it's already created under the soil or inside a substrate like a log, and pushing it out a small crack. And what that's doing is it's creating the mushroom that you're seeing coming out, but it's the chitin cells that have lignin in them that it's just moving and pushing and reforming basically to make this arm, this appendage that sticks out of the soil or substrate, and that is going to be the mushroom. And then it just opens up its fingers and releases all of the spores. It's really interesting how it works and how we can relate it to like an appendage on a body. But these mushrooms, when they first fruit, it happens so quickly that we can get to the mushrooms before the larvae get to them, before the flies have a chance to lay their larvae, which are their eggs, which hatch into larvae. So if we get to the mushrooms in time, guys, then we won't have to worry about soaking the mushrooms and getting all this out, which is why I like to cultivate my own in a fruiting chamber, because we still have fungus flies, but it's right here out my back door. But that's the trick, guys, is getting to the mushrooms before the flies have a chance to lay their eggs and before the eggs have a chance to hatch. All these things take time, but it doesn't take a lot of time. So we got to get there quick. We got to keep our eyes. If we're walking through the woods and we see a flush, or we see like pinning, which is when the mushroom first starts to produce its fruiting bodies. So we see little pins come on, and when we see those pins, we can come back a day or 2 days later, sometimes 3. But if we wait a week, chances are we're going to have to deal with fungus flies and larvae. So just keep that in mind, guys. But I hope you guys are thinking this is useful and helpful information to give you a better understanding of what's going on in nature, because in a lot of parts of the world, these are considered to be nutritious. Like, there are parts of the world, that, especially undeveloped parts, where a lot of nutrition is hard to find on a regular basis throughout the year, like in droughts and in periods where food is just unavailable because of natural issues. So in those places, larva is a huge source of protein. So, and we just need to understand that what we've been doing is based on what we've experienced and what people have done around us. We find this to be gross and unacceptable because of the way we've been brought up and because of the things people have said around us while we've been alive. If we lived in different parts of the world and were associated with these other beliefs, we wouldn't think the things that we do. So it's just a different way of looking at life, guys, and it's a more open way of seeing what's happening around the world and understanding why we don't think the way that those people do. I mean, it's not that they're doing anything wrong, or that we're doing anything wrong. It's just different mentalities, and biodiversity is nature's way. So no matter how much we separate ourselves and segregate ourselves, for whatever reason, nature's going to bring us back together. Biodiversity, it's going to mix us up in the long run. No matter what we do, we're going to find ourselves intertwined, interwoven in systems, because that's what nature is. It's just a lot of overlapping systems that work together to produce one end goal, and that is that life needs to be on a productive level, and it needs to be sustainable long term. So production, but not overproduction, because overproduction means that there's too much product being made to sustain. So you're going to have an overabundance of, once you have an overabundance of one thing in any of the natural systems, it constantly cycles that system, and you get an overabundance in everything else, and eventually the system will collapse. Like, for instance, in farmland, if we grow vegetables but we don't pick the vegetables off, those vegetables are all going to fall to the ground, and they're going to rot, and they're going to cause a lot of insects to come in. I mean, in the long run, that's actually going to increase fertility in the ground. But if we just basically leave the ground alone, it will regenerate itself. That's the way nature works. But just as an example, that fruit, if we don't pick it up, it's going to cause insects to come in, and we're going to see this as a means of overproduction, and our system's going to end up collapsing because we'll probably end up spraying something or doing something to try to compensate for what nature is already doing in front of us. We just don't understand it. Just to give you guys an idea of what you're looking at here, I just set up a little makeshift studio. I used to be a photographer, so it's I still am, but I mean, I don't do it full time. But this is just something I picked up. We can make these little studios. But you see how many larvae are on this plate? That's an amazing amount, and we're only looking at this small section right on the corner here. So just to give you guys an idea of how many, and some of them are actually really large. These are to the stage where they're probably going to turn into a fly pretty soon if we didn't get them out of the mushrooms. But yeah, guys, so hope you find that interesting. Thanks, guys. Tom with Permaculture Wilmington.